Humans are strange creatures. That was the consensus among the crew of the Stellar Dawn. They were durable, ingenious, and altogether too comfortable in situations where most other species would crumble. The human engineer on board, Max, was no exception. It started with a crisis, as it often did on a ship constantly testing the edges of uncharted space. A stray asteroid had struck their portside hull, damaging the life support system. Panic rippled through the crew. Captain Zara's mandibles clicked furiously as she shouted orders. Cluck, the avian strategist, squawked in agitation, feathers puffed in fear. Even Groth, usually calm and collected, lumbered about in confusion, trying to assist. Amid the chaos, Max calmly emerged from the maintenance hatch, a grease-smeared jumpsuit clinging to their frame. A wrench in one hand and what looked like duct tape in the other, Max scanned the damage and exhaled. "It's just a coolant leak," they muttered, more to themselves than the crew. A coolant leak? Captain Zara's compound eyes glimmered with incredulity. "The readings indicate critical failure." Max shrugged. "Your system's overly sensitive." "It's fine. Give me 10 minutes. While the crew braced for what they assumed was certain doom, Max dove headfirst into the broken mechanisms. Sparks flew as they worked, patching, tightening, and rewiring. The alien crew exchanged uneasy glances, watching the human operate without the bulky protective gloves the rest of them required. Cluck whispered to Groth, "They don't even feel the radiation. How do they survive on such a hostile planet?" Earth, to the rest of the galaxy, was known as a death world, a planet teeming with dangers, predatory animals, volatile climates, and microorganisms that could devastate most alien species. Humans, however, thrived there, adapting to adversity in ways that baffled the rest of the galaxy. For this reason, humans were called Deathworlders, a title that brought equal parts awe and apprehension. Max's work was done in just under 9 minutes. They stood, wiping their hands on their jumpsuit. Good as new. Life support's back online. The crew let out a collective sigh of relief. Captain Zar tilted her head, her antennae twitching. Efficient if unorthodox. But I still question the wisdom of having a Deathworlder on board. Max chuckled, leaning against the wall. "You say that every time, Captain. And yet, I'm still here." Before the captain could retort, a shrill alarm echoed through the ship. The console screen lit up with a distress signal from a nearby derelict station. The station's automated message blared in a language the translator struggled to parse, but the universal tone of desperation was clear. Cluck leaned closer to the console, his talons clacking nervously. "That's a restricted zone. We shouldn't." "We're going," Max interrupted, already grabbing their toolkit. Zar frowned, her antennae twitching. "Are you certain? The station's condition is unknown. It could be too dangerous." Max smirked. "Dangerous is just another Tuesday for me." As Max finished stabilizing the reactor, a low, guttural noise reverberated through the station. The crew froze, their gazes darting to the dark corridors surrounding them. Groth's scales bristled, and he sniffed the air cautiously. "That doesn't sound like machinery." Cluck flapped his wings nervously, backing toward the exit. "We shouldn't be here. This station is abandoned for a reason." Before anyone could respond, a sharp screech pierced the air, followed by the unmistakable sound of claws scraping metal. From the shadows emerged creatures unlike anything the crew had seen before, six-legged, with spiny exoskeletons and glowing red eyes. They moved with unsettling speed, their serrated limbs clicking against the floor. Max didn't hesitate. "All right, everyone, back to the ship." They grabbed a nearby metal rod, brandishing it like a weapon. The crew scrambled, but the creatures closed in too quickly, cutting off their retreat. One lunged at Groth, who swatted it aside with his massive tail, but the creature merely shook itself and charged again. Cluck screeched, barely dodging another that leaped toward him. "We're surrounded." Zar snapped, her antennae twitching in panic. Max glanced around, calculating. Their eyes fell on a broken maintenance hatch overhead. "We need to split them up." "Groth, cover me." Without waiting for confirmation, Max bolted toward the hatch. Groth roared, stepping in front of the advancing creatures, swiping and snarling to buy time. Max climbed the exposed pipes with surprising agility, reaching the hatch and prying it open. Up here. Move. One by one, the crew followed, Cluckus' talons scrabbling for purchase and Zara's chitinous limbs clicking against the metal. Grokt was last, hauling himself through just as a clawed limb slashed at his tail. Inside the narrow maintenance shaft, the crew panted in the dim light, their fear palpable. Max was already moving, leading them deeper into the station. "These things are territorial," they said, their voice steady despite the situation. "We just need to get them off our trail." Zar hissed. "And how do you propose we do that?" Max smirked, holding up a small cylindrical device they'd grabbed earlier. "With this improvised EMP charge. Should disrupt their senses long enough for us to escape." Cluckus' eyes widened. "Where did you even get that?" "Scavenged it," Max replied. "Keep up." The creatures were relentless, their clicking limbs echoing through the shafts as they closed in. Max led the crew to a junction and planted the device on the wall. "This should give us a head start," they said, flipping a switch. "Cover your ears." The charge detonated with a high-pitched whine, and the pursuing creatures shrieked, disoriented by the sudden electromagnetic pulse. Max didn't wait to see the results. "Go. Now." They sprinted back toward the docking bay, the crew following close behind. The station groaned ominously as more structural damage became evident, but Max's focus was unshakable. Reaching the ship, they ushered the crew aboard and sealed the airlock just as the creatures regained their bearings and surged toward them. The Stellar Dawn detached from the station, its engines flaring as it sped away. Inside, the crew collapsed in relief, their breaths ragged. Zar looked at Max, her antennae drooping in exhaustion. "You saved us." Again. Max leaned against the wall, catching their breath. "That's what I'm here for." Cluck shook his head, his feathers still ruffled. "You're insane." "Brave, but insane." Max grinned, pulling out their toolkit to inspect the damage. "You'd be surprised how often those two things go hand in hand,"